August 4th, 1962, Los Angeles, California, 10:30 p.m. Marilyn Monroe picks up the phone in her Brentwood home and makes what would be her final phone call. The person on the other end of that line would later sit across from FBI agents and tell them something chilling. She didn't sound like herself. Her voice was shaking. She kept saying someone was at the door. Someone was coming. She sounded terrified. 3 hours later, at 3:30 in the morning, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her bedroom. For 60 years, the Federal Bureau of Investigation kept a 600-page file on Marilyn Monroe locked away, classified, sealed, forbidden from public access, until 3 weeks ago. And what they found inside that file will change everything you thought you knew about the most famous death in Hollywood history. If you love discovering the untold stories behind history's greatest mysteries, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because we uncover the truth that Hollywood tried to bury. Here's what most people don't know about Marilyn Monroe. She wasn't just a movie star. She wasn't just a blonde bombshell who sang happy birthday to the president. Marilyn Monroe was under active FBI surveillance. Federal agents were assigned to follow her. They recorded her phone calls. They photographed who she met with. They documented where she went, what she said, who visited her home in the middle of the night. They watched her for 7 years. But why? Why would the most powerful law enforcement agency in America dedicate resources, manpower, and countless hours to watching a Hollywood actress? What was Marilyn Monroe doing that made J. Edgar Hoover himself open a case file on her? The answer is inside that file. And I'm warning you right now, it's darker, more complex, and more disturbing than any movie script ever written about her. The surveillance began in 1955. Marilyn Monroe was at the absolute peak of her career. The 7-year itch had just been released. That iconic scene with her white dress blowing up over the subway grate had made her the most photographed woman in the world. Millions of people loved her. But behind closed doors, the FBI saw something very different. They saw her friendships, her political connections, the people she was spending time with. Her acting coach, Lee Strasberg, had known ties to socialist groups. Her lawyer had defended people accused of being communist sympathizers. She attended parties where left-wing intellectuals gathered and discussed politics. This was 1955, the height of the Cold War. McCarthyism was in full swing. America was terrified of communist infiltration, and to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, Marilyn Monroe looked suspicious. On March 12, 1955, he personally signed the order to open case file number 1005-40018. Subject: Norma Jean Mortensen, also known as Marilyn Monroe. From that day forward, FBI agents were assigned to track her movements. They sat in unmarked cars outside her apartment. They recorded her phone conversations. They followed her to restaurants, to studios, to private homes. One FBI memorandum from June 1956, now declassified and visible in the file, reads exactly this. Subject has been observed on multiple occasions meeting with individuals of known communist affiliation. Subject's activities warrant continued surveillance. Marilyn Monroe had absolutely no idea she was being watched. She went about her life. She made movies. She fell in love. She got married and divorced. She laughed with friends and cried alone in hotel rooms. And the entire time men in dark suits were writing down every single thing she did. But here's what they buried for 60 years. Here's what J. Edgar Hoover didn't want the American public to ever find out. The FBI wasn't watching Marilyn Monroe because of her political friends. They were watching her because of who she was sleeping with. In early 1962, Marilyn Monroe began a secret affair with the President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And when that relationship ended badly, when JFK cut her off and stopped returning her calls. She turned to his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, the Attorney General of the United States, the two most powerful men in the entire country. And Marilyn Monroe knew their secrets. She knew about the Bay of Pigs disaster. She knew about plans for Cuba. She knew about affairs, about deals, about conversations that happened in the Oval Office. And the FBI knew that she knew. The declassified file reveals something the American public was never told. Marilyn Monroe had a private, direct phone line to the White House. She could call the president whenever she wanted, and she did, constantly. Secret Service agents stationed at the White House switchboard logged every single call. They kept records. They took notes. One Secret Service agent, in a statement given to the FBI years later, said this: "She called so frequently that we started to become concerned." The president would take her calls at strange hours, sometimes at midnight, sometimes at 3 in the morning. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn Monroe stood on stage at Madison Square Garden in New York City in front of 19,000 people and sang Happy Birthday to President Kennedy. She wore a dress so tight she had to be sewn into it. Her voice was breathy, seductive, playful. The crowd went wild. Cameras flashed. The whole world watched. What the world didn't see was what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. That night, Marilyn stayed at the Carlyle Hotel on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. President Kennedy was also at the Carlyle Hotel. FBI agents were stationed in the hallway outside Marilyn's suite. They heard voices. They heard laughter. They heard music playing. One FBI report, declassified just weeks ago, states the following: subject was observed leaving the president's suite at 4:17 a.m. on May 20th, 1962. But the relationship was dangerous. It was reckless. Too many people knew. Too many whispers were spreading through Washington and Hollywood. In early June 1962, President Kennedy made a decision. He cut Marilyn off completely. No more phone calls, no more visits, no more late-night conversations. Marilyn was devastated. She called the White House over and over. Her calls were blocked. She was drinking more, taking more sleeping pills, showing up late to movie sets, or not showing up at all. And then something happened that made everything even more complicated. She started calling Robert Kennedy, the president's younger brother, the Attorney General, the man who was supposed to be fixing problems, not creating new ones, and Robert Kennedy started visiting her. The final 2 weeks of Marilyn Monroe's life are documented in horrifying detail in the FBI file. Late July 1962. Marilyn is fired from the movie Something's Got to Give. The studio says she's unreliable, unprofessional, impossible to work with. Her career is collapsing. August 1st, 1962. Robert Kennedy is in Los Angeles on government business. Multiple witnesses see his car parked outside Marilyn's home in Brentwood. He goes inside. They argue. Neighbors later report hearing loud voices, shouting, the sound of something breaking. One neighbor, interviewed by the FBI, stated, "I heard a man's voice, very angry, saying, 'You need to stop this. You need to calm down. This has to end.'" August 3rd, 1962. Marilyn calls her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, at 2 o'clock in the morning. She's crying, slurring her words. She tells him she's going to hold a press conference. She's going to tell the truth about everything, about Jack, about Bobby, about all of it. August 4th, 1962. The last day of Marilyn Monroe's life. Phone records obtained by the FBI show that Marilyn made 13 phone calls that day. 3 calls were placed to the White House switchboard. All were refused. 2 calls were made to Robert Kennedy's office in Washington, D.C. Both went unanswered. One call was made to her lawyer, Mickey Rudin. She told him she wanted to schedule a press conference for the following week. She said she had something important to announce. At 7:30 p.m. that evening, multiple witnesses reported seeing a black sedan matching the description of Robert Kennedy's driver's vehicle parked on 5th Helena Drive, the street where Marilyn lived. At 10:30 p.m., Marilyn makes her final phone call. She calls her friend, actor Peter Lawford, President Kennedy's brother-in-law. Peter would later tell investigators that Marilyn's voice sounded strange, distant, resigned. She said to him, "Say goodbye to the president and say goodbye to yourself, Peter, because you're a nice guy." Then she hung up. At 3:30 a.m. on August 5th, 1962, Marilyn Monroe's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, noticed a light still on under Marilyn's bedroom door. She knocked. No answer. She called Dr. Greenson. He broke the bedroom window and climbed inside. Marilyn Monroe was lying face down on her bed, naked, one hand clutching the telephone. She was dead. The official cause of death, announced by the Los Angeles County coroner, was acute barbiturate poisoning, accidental overdose. Case closed. But the FBI file tells a very, very different story. Page 243 of the file contains a surveillance memo from an FBI agent who was stationed across the street from Marilyn's home on the night of August 4th. He reports that at approximately 12:40 a.m., he observed two vehicles leaving Marilyn Monroe's property. One vehicle matched the registration of the car assigned to Robert Kennedy's personal driver. The second vehicle was never identified. Page 312 contains phone records from Pacific Telephone Company. The records show that 3 outgoing calls were made from Marilyn's home phone between 11 p.m. on August 4th and 2 a.m. on August 5th. In the official police report, these calls do not exist. They were deleted, erased. Page 401 is a transcript of an interview conducted with Dr. Ralph Greenson, Marilyn's psychiatrist, on August 7, 1962. In the interview, Dr. Greenson admits that on the afternoon of August 5th, just hours after Marilyn's death, he received a phone call from someone identifying themselves as calling from Washington, D.C. The caller told him to forget everything Marilyn had told him in their sessions, to keep his mouth shut, to cooperate with the official story. Dr. Greenson refused to name the caller. Page 489 contains a toxicology report that was never entered into the official autopsy. This report shows barbiturate levels inconsistent with oral ingestion. The drugs found in Marilyn's system appeared to have been administered in a way other than swallowing pills. The FBI had all of this. They had witness statements. They had phone records. They had surveillance reports from their own agents. And for 60 years they kept it locked in a vault. So what really happened to Marilyn Monroe on the night of August 4th, 1962? The file doesn't give us a definitive answer. It doesn't name names. It doesn't point fingers. What it does give us is evidence. Evidence that powerful people wanted Marilyn Monroe silenced. Evidence that she was in danger and the people who could have protected her did nothing. Evidence that the official story we've been told for 6 decades is incomplete at best and a deliberate cover-up at worst. Marilyn Monroe was more than a blonde bombshell. She was more than a sex symbol in a white dress standing over a subway grate. She was a woman who knew too much. A woman who had intimate knowledge of the private lives and secrets of the most powerful men in the world. And when she decided she was going to speak out, when she decided the truth mattered more than protecting them, she paid for it with her life. Marilyn Monroe died at 36 years old. Alone in her bedroom in a small house in Brentwood, no one there to hold her hand, no one there to hear her final words. But maybe after 60 years of silence, after 60 years of lies and cover-ups and sealed files, Maybe we're finally hearing her voice again. Through these FBI documents, through these declassified memos and surveillance reports, we see the real Marilyn. Not the movie star, not the icon, not the fantasy. A real woman who was watched, controlled, used, and ultimately destroyed by forces far more powerful than she could ever have imagined. If this story moved you, if you believe the truth deserves to be told no matter how many years have passed, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and leave a comment below telling me what you think really happened that night. Because Marilyn Monroe's story isn't just about one woman who died 60 years ago. It's about what happens when power goes unchecked, when secrets are protected at all costs, when the truth is buried because it's inconvenient for the people at the top. And that story is still being written today. So what do you think? Was Marilyn Monroe's death an accident, or was it something much darker? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to discover more hidden stories from Hollywood's golden age, check out this video next where we uncover the incredible true story of how Marilyn Monroe saved Ella Fitzgerald's career with a single phone call. I'll see you in the next one.